Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation to bring you another faction-focused video for my cronies. Today, we're going to talk about one of the loved, hated, loved, nerfed, super strong, overpower, the Crypthralls. These guys have been on a roller coaster for 10th edition in such a short time frame, from being a must-include to completely out of list to maybe they're usable to way overcosted, to now what most people have felt are not as good, not a takeable unit. And a lot of people are shying away from the Crypthralls in what they are as a 60-point unit. But today I want to talk about these guys a little bit and say, I don't think that they should be so quick to go to the shelves. There's some versatility behind these. It's not a hidden secret, but some food for thought about the Crypthralls in the Necron dynasty and how different Necron detachments, and how these guys may be closer to what Games Workshop envisioned for characters to do than most other units in the game. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn on the bell to get notified on all the content that we bring here on the channel, including our usually weekly battle reports. And I do apologize right now. With the holidays, it is an extremely busy time for all of us and most of my friends who play 40K. So we will be jumping right back in once we get through the holidays, and looking forward to starting off the year and get into the new year and start doing our little in-house tournament to crown the first champion on the channel. Working on the title belt right now for that not as we speak, because otherwise I'd have a title belt in my hand. But anyways, again, guys, please like, share, subscribe. And let's jump over and start talking about the Crypthralls. So, Crypthralls, at the beginning of 10th edition, when the indexes hit, were a must-include, auto-include, such a busted wall for many detachments and many different Necron units. Being that Cryptex, the one requirement of them, was able to join a variety, 3 different units in Lichguard, Warriors, and Immortals. 2 of those units being Battle Line, and 2 of different units seeing a lot of play, Lichguard and Warriors. So pretty much every Lichguard and Warrior unit would have a Cryptech in there of some flavor. Typically a Technomancer for the Feel No Pain, sometimes Orkin for his Swore Up Invulnerable save, and those who wanted to be crafty would throw a Chronomancer in there to be able to do a little Fire and Fade. However, this wasn't going to be long-lasting. See, the Crypthralls presented a lot of interesting game dynamic problems in and of themselves. First of all, initially, the Crypthralls would give fight on death to the entire unit. Based on the wording and the way the game works, since they were joined to the unit, they conferred their ability into the unit. This caused a lot of issues. Being able to fight on death with Immortals that would then reanimate was making it a little too busted for their point costs at the time. So Games Workshop errated this to make it that only the Crypthralls would gain the fight on death possibility on a 4-up. Might have been a 3-up, but either way, the Crypthralls were the only ones who were able to gain that. So then, so now the Crypthralls were still usable in a very strong fashion, being that they were 2 wound models with a 4-up Feel No Pain. These guys could soak up a lot of damage, and in some ways were the only things that could stop mortal wounds and devastating wounds at this point in the edition. At this point in the edition, the devastating wounds that were dealing mortal wounds and clearing through entire squads, these guys had a 4-up Feel No Pain. So you could at least attempt to slow down a Wraith Knight with its Wraith Cannon just cleaving a hole right in the middle of a 20-man squad. With that being said, then Devastating Wounds got shifted. Devastating Wounds didn't do mortal wounds anymore. They were simply wounds that would just not be a save. And with that, now the attention was being brought on the power of the Crypthralls. Because now in this edition, we have started to learn how we can wound allocate and play the games and bounce wounds off these guys with a Feel No Pain and provide so much more durability to an already durable army. Combined with Lichguard, combined with a Reanimator, a Resurrection, or -1 to wound because a Lord is in there, and you have Lichguard bricks that are basically unkillable by today's standard of weaponry. So Games Workshop said, okay, well, let's crank the points up really high. And did they? This put Crypthralls in a point where they were too expensive to run like they were being run before. This did not stop the Crypthrall, though. The Crypthralls were still showing up in Lichguard bricks, where if you ran a single, you still could use the Crypthralls to be able to absorb so much damage. This then put it at a point where some tournament organizers felt the need that the Crypthralls were not able to then reanimate back in the squad. Given the fact that they increased the starting size and starting strength of the squad, the Crypthralls are able to reanimate even if both die. Some TOs would rule against that, meaning that you had to keep one alive to try to slow down how much of that damage output happened. I only noticed that a lot of times at an RTT level because of the fact that this was not a it's going kind of against the grain of the rules. But for some newer players, it did lead to some feels bad for how durable and how much Lichguard bricks could actually take on. Needless to say, this did not stop their advances. It did not stop them from going in there because you could still keep one alive and the feel no pain was very, very strong. The point increase just simply slowed them down. Now we go into this edition, this codex, this time frame, and we see Crypthralls change significantly with a 3 wounds instead of 2, and they lose their 4-up feel no pain. So what does this mean? Well, obviously losing the 4-up feel no pain takes the durability down significantly. But wait, we've given them an extra wound. Doesn't that make them better? Not in the concept of the Necron numbers and how Necrons work. So Necrons now reanimate typically on a D3. And with some of the other dynasties, we don't have the exact same reanimation tools that we did through Awakened Detachment. I call them dynasties a lot, old Necron style of it, but I mean, when I say dynasty, I mean detachment. So when we see the detachments that come away from Awakened Dynasty and the nerf to the Reanimator dropping it from 12 inches to a 3-inch range, this means that the Crypthralls fall into a column where if you're trying to reanimate one, it can take up your entire reanimation dice and just simply get back one small model. It throws off those reanimation numbers in that factor. And since they don't have the inherent feel no pain, unless there's a Technomancer around, they're just going to take the damage and fall. There's still 60 points for 2 of them. They still can equip to any squad with a Technomancer in it. And for that reason, a lot of people looked down and said, well, the Crypthrall is dead. The Crypthrall is not usable. This is too expensive. You can't rely on it. Because the problem comes into the sense of if you spend 180 points on 3 Crypthrall units to put in 3 units, that's an expensive investment for what these do, especially if they're in a unit that they end up doing nothing. And that's where I draw back into what Crypthralls can do now. See, when we started off this edition, we looked into the fact of how characters functioned. And characters function in the way that you do not assign them to a unit until the beginning, before the first battle round. That is when you assign characters, transports, everything, before that point in the game. This is when these models would be attached to a unit. And what I found with them is not taking 3, but taking 1 60-point unit. And when you look at your opponent's roster and you look for certain specific things, and you see certain specific things, that's where the Crypthralls go. So an example with my most recent Canoptic list, what I found was when I was going into artillery matchups, such as Whirlwinds, or the Shadow Weavers, or Night Spinners, I believe it is, for Eldar. Any of the artillery that can actually really hurt me, that's where then these Crypthralls need to go with my Immortals. I need protection from them to be able to have some extra wounds to block. I don't care if the Crypthralls come back. I want the Immortals to be at the highest amount of strength for the maximum damage output that I can get out of that squad. And the Crypthralls do that. For being able to be with a squad that is -1 to hit, no feel, no pain, sadly. But losing 6 wounds there first versus losing 6 Immortals first feels much better. It also allows me to make sure I'm getting over to the end of the shooting phase, where I can then use my Resurrection Orb to bring some of them back to then reanimate at the beginning of my turn. So the Crypthralls are a 60-point shield for that unit. Now let's talk about the units that are more close combat oriented, like when the matchup with Space Wolves, or any of the other units, armies that are really wanting to push across the table, or units for that matter. In those scenarios, I would attach the Crypthralls to the Wraiths with Infiltrate. Now, this is a fun one now. Because of the fact that the Technomancer can attach to the Wraiths, that means the Crypthralls can too. They're only a 5-inch move, where the Wraiths are significantly faster. That 5-inch move is just for them specifically, that model. So that means they get strung back, etc., etc. That's what makes very good use out of the Infiltrate that we can take for Canoptic Court. By putting the Crypthralls with a unit of Wraiths that can infiltrate, now a unit that may be more on a more forward deployment or a more aggressive stance to look at an objective marker that might have been more difficult to get from your deployment zone. If your opponent is able to do anything tricky or dedicates anything tricky to try to do damage to that Wraith squad early and hurt them, now you have 2 Crypthralls that can absorb that damage, and once again, you don't care if they come back. You don't care if your reanimation ever gets back to the point of reanimating the Crypthralls. You're trying to keep the Wraiths. And because the Technomancer's there, now you do have the Feel No Pain. And they are significantly tougher to take down. If your opponent puts Stray Errant Fire into it and doesn't hurt you because it's Stray and it's not that strong and they do no damage, cool. Your Crypthralls are alive. If they accidentally go hot and do a bit of damage, you have 6 wounds, 2 models to go through, 3 wounds apiece, however that weapon damage comes over, before you have to take out a Wraith or even touch a Wraith. And then if you do lose a Wraith, you can then reanimate, bring the Wraith back, and use a Techno to heal it back to full. And now you're at a point that 60-point unit protected the Wraith squad on that forward deployment. And to me, that's great value. That is huge value. So in conclusion with this, Games Workshop started this game, as like I said, with the characters that we were supposed to put and attach to units at the pre-battle moments in those steps. They're not attached in the roster, is the point I'm trying to make, nor are the Crypthralls. However, within the concept of roster design, you kind of already have that in mind of what characters are going to go in what squads. I haven't seen too much play around having multiple character, multifaceted Swiss Army knife right now in this edition. Back with my Annihilation, my Destroyer cult list, it was me and Lane, myself and Lane did discuss the fact that I could deploy the Destroyer Lords the Scorpack Lords by themselves instead of with the units. And while that might have been a play with that list at that time to let it go really wide and cover a lot of the board, it wasn't the concept for it. It was an extra. And I don't see a lot of lists building towards okay, in this matchup, these characters go here or these characters go there. We're still building units with characters in mind. The Crypthralls function, I think, in that way, where the Crypthralls, depending on the matchup, can be the unit that you go, okay, I'm facing off against a gun line. Well, that's going to weaken my Immortals because of this, and this weapon. So I want my Immortals protected because I want them to push later in the game. Or in some matchup, because of the devastating wound effect, it might be a vehicle-heavy matchup. Or I'm looking at my opponent being able to crash across the field, and I want to hold them back with the Wraiths. So I need those extra wounds in there. Something to think about with the Crypthralls. There is only 3 units that Technomancers can join, and that is Immortals, Warriors, and of course now Technomancers into Wraiths. So that means the only units that can then take the Crypthralls would be those. So maybe this is a Canoptic Court only exclusive scenario with this, but I still feel like some of the other detachments, like example, the Hyper Crypt Legion, if you have different options and different weapons that you're looking to bring out of Deep Strike or bring out of the Monolith, different styles of maybe Lich Guard if you're doing an aggressive play with the spears versus the shields, or these other units. There may be a unit that you really want to dedicate to bring out of it, and this will help protect them once they land or once they push. You know, being able to bring a unit out from that monolith that close, shoot, and then move again, even if you're not charging off like the Chronomancer's buff, that can steal a home field objective and score behind enemy lines or capture enemy outposts out of left field. And capture enemy outposts in a lot of situations is 8 points right there. So those are my thoughts on the Crypthralls. I definitely think there is a lot of play, and I think that as the edition evolves and as we see new codexes come out and the power creep for those codexes start to occur, and as Necron players, we have to adjust and address to that for where our book stands and where our abilities stand. We have to address those things. I think the Crypthralls will be a very critical unit to allow us to buy time on the table to figure out how devastating those units can be without completely losing the game in the process. So those are my thoughts on Crypthralls. And if this is a video that you like, or you did enjoy this video, then probably you're looking at different concepts of lists and stuff that you want to try. And Lane and I have discussed something very recently. It's something new I want to try in the channel here. And I'm going to present this right now to everybody. Now, there's full disclaimer. This is my free beta test. Get it? It's free, and we're beta testing. So please, do not get upset with me if I change the rules and change up how I'm doing this and everything else in the future while I'm figuring this out, because it was just a new concept and idea that I want to see how it works out. And that is, I want anyone out there, any of my cronies out there that have a list that they want to see on the channel or they wanted to try. Maybe you don't get as much time at a game store. Maybe you've had extensively matchups against one player and that player only plays Imperial Knights and you'd want to see it go into something else or a different matchup, specifically some of the armies that Lane has available to play against me. So, and that's what it is. I want lists. Send me your list. Send me a list you want to see on the channel. And over the next couple weeks, I want to I'm going to put something together. I'm going to pick one of the lists. I have no idea how I'm going to pick the list or which one it's going to be. I can't say like, oh, if you do this, I'll pick this list, or if you do that. I don't have any criteria. I just want to get this started, get the ball rolling, and try a new idea and see if I can't build on it through execution. And one rule for the list building is no Canoptic Court. We have already seen with GT finishes at 5-0 already. My personal RTT finish 3-0, and Lane can attest for this too. The Canoptic Court is very good. It is a very solid competitive design for an army, and I think that's one that's going to stand the test of time for us for a long time. But it's not the only detachment we have. So any lists that are submitted over, anything but Canoptic Court at this time. So let's get some cool things on the channel. I'm very interested to see what everyone's working on. See if I can't put something together, put it on the channel, play it. Again, if you're not able to get your list out there and you want to see it a bit and want to see some ideas and concepts behind it, please, by all means, throw it in the comment section. I'll take a look at it. I don't know, again, what's going to be the way I pick it, but we'll get it chosen. All right. I've rambled on enough. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.